Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse Pulse. We're still at Marievale, so we're shooting some episodes at Marievale today. And one of the other topics we wanted to talk about, which might interest a lot of people, is apps. So, what birding app should you use? What birding app are people using out there? What's the best one for you specifically? It's myself and Pranesh, and we're going to talk about a bunch of apps. So we're going to talk about the Merlin/eBirds app. So there's the two of those. We're going to talk about Birder, and then we're also going to be talking about Lasser and Roberts and Sassel. Yeah. So in the South African context, people that are not in South Africa, we also have very specific apps for South African birds or Southern African birds. And then obviously there's the Merlin app, and then I think Birder is also like a worldwide app.
Yeah, Birder is worldwide.
So we'll talk about that, and then we'll see. We'll figure out like potentially what's the best app for you. We've tried most of these apps, so yeah, we can pretty much give a little bit of an opinion on it. So yeah, I think let's start off, Pranesh. What is your favorite birding app? What do you use every single day when you go out birding?
Well, I generally love having my book on hand, but it does become cumbersome to carry around. So I've been using both Birder and the eBirds, the Merlin identification suite rather than the logging suite. So I think we'll have to go into a little bit on what the apps do as well. So Bird Lasser is also an app that I use, but that one is more for listing birds. So it uses your GPS coordinates, and you can create trips, and then on these trips you can then log the birds as you go along, and it will log the birds' coordinates and keep a list of all the birds that you've seen, keeps a life list as well. Birder, which I've been using more regularly recently, since getting on in September, has the lists as well, but then it gives you challenges, and then it also gives the month by month and for the year and by location. So it gives a little bit more detail on the where you've seen the birds. And what it does as well is it has pictures that help you identify the birds, which is very important because then you can leave your book behind at home as well. And that's what I was using the Merlin app for as well, more for the identification than for the listing, because the listing is separate on the eBirds. And maybe, PJ, you can give us more details on the listing or the listing functionality of eBirds.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think, like Pranesh said, that there is two different parts to eBirds. There's an eBirds application, and then there's the Merlin application. Like you mentioned, Merlin is for identification, where you would pretty much get like the sound, the pictures, a description of the bird, and a map of where it's been distributed. And then the eBirds part of it is pretty much being able to log your specific bird. So like as we out here at Marievale, where we're logging birds. So we've seen like we're seeing about like, I don't know, probably about 50 to 60 lesser flamingos right in front of us over here. So we would log the 50 or 60 flamingos on the app, and that would obviously count towards your life list. Within that app also, it also has like, if you do want to go advanced, it has like a whole bunch of like, you can identify like the breeding patterns, or you can behavior patterns of that particular bird. So if you see the bird on a nest, you can say, I've seen this bird on a nest. If it was a flyover, if it was just a singing bird, on all of those type of things, you can add a little bit of stuff over there. And then what it also tells you, if this bird is a very common bird that you're seeing. So as you type in the name for that bird, you will see that it pretty much will either have nothing, or it will have an orange ring saying it's very uncommon. It will have a red ring saying that it's rare. And if it has a red ring with a rarity sign, which is a big R, then that means that it's like probably very, very rare to see that particular bird. And then you have to actually give a comment to describing the bird or the location or where you saw it, or just give some information about that
Additional
particular
information,
additional information. And obviously that way you can pretty much log the log your specific list, and then you can upload that to your I guess your cloud/account, where your eBirds account lives, and everything kind of like lives in the cloud, and makes it quite easy to kind of like, I guess, switch apps and all of those type of things. And this is kind of where I want to segue into the next part, which is around like managing your bird list. So there's other apps that we've spoken about, like the Sassel app, and potentially Roberts. I don't know if Roberts, if you can log on there.
I'm not 100%.
I'm not 100% sure either. We'll find out from someone that has Roberts, and then we'll just tell you. Also, we'll put up maybe like a picture of these apps somewhere, and then we'll also put the links to all these apps in the
video
description. But yeah, I think some of these apps are very local when it comes to logging. So I can say for Sassel, that's how I started. I started with the Sassel eBirds app. Not the Sassel eBirds, the Sassel app, which technically has a book as its companion. And there, when you're logging your birds on that particular app, you're logging it locally onto your device. And what that means is that if you get a new phone, you'll have to do like some kind of like exporting and doing some crazy stuff to kind of like get it onto your new phone. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think like, so eBirds, that's one of the advantages of eBirds, is that like every time you're submitting your list, you're submitting it to the cloud, and then you can pretty much just log into your account on a different device and get your list back. And everything kind of like lives in the cloud. But what about like Bird Lasser and like Birder? I'm guessing it's very similar.
I think it's very similar, and with Bird Lasser, you can also what we've done previously is you can log a list or for the day, and then export it into a CVS file, and then CSV, sorry, and then share it with someone who's maybe using another app. So PJ can get my CSV file and look through and add it. I think there is functionality where you can export your Lasser list to eBirds, but I haven't been able to get that right. PJ says I must just take some time.
There's some user issues.
Yeah, user issues rather than app issues.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things to mention with Lasser, and I think eBirds as well, is that because it's not saved locally, it uploads to the cloud. That data can also be shared with the universities that I think Cornell University is associated with eBirds, and Lasser also, they share the information. They call it citizen science or something like that, where they track where birds are located and which species are located in certain areas, which then also contributes to conservation efforts going forward.
For sure.
I think one of the advantages of both Lasser, eBirds, and Birder, or all three of them, is that they're all free apps, because you are contributing to the science, so there is some incentive to do it for free. I think Sassel and Roberts
you have to pay for. So Sassel is based on the Sassel book, and I think this is just a digital version of that with logging. And I think that one is 350 Rand. I guess we'll just check the prices again and stuff, and we'll also just, if we're incorrect. And then I think Roberts is probably similar, might be a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, I think it's like 500 Rand.
Yeah.
And one of the issues on Roberts is there was a Roberts 1.
Yeah.
And then Roberts 2 was released, and you had to rebuy Roberts 2.
You had to rebuy it.
I think, and there was some public uproar about that.
And I think it was basically because of the name changes. So there's been a bunch of like taxon name changes, and I think they then updated the names for Roberts too. Maybe they did some more illustrations or whatever and stuff like that. But I think the main thing was people were getting updated names, and you pretty much had to pay another $500 for that. And I think that's where people kind of were not really like happy with that. I mean, I wouldn't have been happy either. And I started on Sassel. Bought the app on the App Store, but then transitioned over to eBirds. And again, one of the advantages that we just spoke about also for, I guess, Lhasa is very
Yeah.
Africa based. There's a lot. I know a lot of people in Kenya that use it and stuff like that. But then also Bird, and like you said, it's global. So if you're ever going on trips outside of Southern Africa or South Africa, eBirds is probably one of the best because they have these birding packs where you can download the birds for every single country in the world, pretty much most of the birding countries in the world, and then you'll be able to have pictures, sound, and like location for some of these birds and descriptions. Whereas I guess like a lot of the Roberts and the Sassel is very Southern Africa based,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like also not being updated technically on the go if you think about it. Like eBirds is pretty much like every year they kind of do this like update to the app, and you just get a new list almost. You update your pack and you potentially get like birds that people have been seeing frequently in the world and stuff in specific situations. So I think it all becomes a preference depending on like if you bird outside of South Africa. It makes it a little bit easier to potentially have bird or eBirds or maybe even Lhasa just in terms of Africa. And then like I guess Sassel, I think a lot of people just use those apps because they know the apps. I think it's also because they give Afrikaans names in
And
some of them
descriptions.
and
Yeah.
descriptions, which obviously in South Africa, like a lot of birders also are Afrikaans, so they potentially like those names and stuff like that.
And I think they were first to market. I mean, a lot of these, like Lhasa is more recent. I think eBirds is, I'm not too sure how more.
I have no
Birder
idea.
is recently launched as well. So
Exactly.
Sassol has been around for a good number of years. So there's that familiarity that they switched from book to
app.
online, and yeah, it was a smoother transition. I think one of the reasons, and PJ mentioned taxonomy, one of the reasons why I haven't used eBirds as much is the South African names for some birds are different. I think we pick on cordon bleu.
Southern cotton blur.
Southern cordon bleu, gonolek.
Instead of red-breasted,
Crimson-breasted.
crimson-breasted shrike.
And then I think the one that frustrated me was the Birchall's cuckoo, which is white.
The white-browed cockle, which I mean, they technically, I don't know. Some people say they are the same bird. Some people say they're not, but you do get a variant of the white-browed cockle. So potentially, you never know that might be something that people get confused about. I know Pranesh just doesn't like it.
I think I'm used to the taxonomy we use in South Africa, which is, can be, there can be some issues with that as well. For instance, I think they've changed the name of the chestnut vented tit babbler a few times. It was...
I think it's chestnut vented warbler now.
Warbler, I'm not 100% sure even what it is now, but it's chestnut vented. And then things like the I think it's the greenback Cameroptera and the greyback Cameroptera, where there's arguments of whether it should be the same bird. Previously, it was called the bleating warbler.
Yeah, somebody told us that.
So naming conventions, I think, could be a whole other discussion. I'm not 100% sure on why birds are named the way they are, but when you get used to using a certain convention, you sometimes then find it, well, I've personally found it hard to get onto the eBirds naming convention because I'm using my books that are all South African and Lhasa, which is South African. So having those two names in mind every time you log, and it's not all the birds. There are birds that are...
Yeah, there's probably like 90% of the birds are very similar across all apps and stuff, and there's just a bunch of like random ones that are just like not the same. So I think where this also doesn't help is that like I would go out. I recently was birding in Port Alfred, I used one of the guides that are down there, and he asked me, yo, can you send me a list? So eBirds has this feature where you can generate a target list for a specific area, which you have to do you have to do it on the website. But I generated this thing and I sent him this PDF, and he was kind of like very confused by the names.
Yeah, yeah.
He was like, oh, I need to kind of go and like, I guess, study the names and figure out which birds are which now. So I think that does kind of like contribute to kind of like the confusion. And then especially if you're like just talking to other birders and they say something and they're like, oh, I'm like, oh, I don't think I've seen that bird. And then you're like, oh, I actually have seen it. It's actually this other bird.
Yeah.
It's actually the same bird, but it's a different name. So yeah, I think it all comes down to it. I think I just didn't start with a book when I started birding. I started on the apps.
Yeah.
I started with Sassel, but then I moved quickly to eBirds just because I like kind of like having my stuff in the cloud. I don't like to make sure like now I lose my phone and all of a sudden my life list is gone. Like for me, like my phone needs to just kind of be like a tool for me and everything needs to live somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where I've just ended up doing eBirds and I'm kind of like really enjoying that. And I think also I've traveled a little bit and been able to travel. I'm a bird a little bit
Internationally.
outside.
Yeah.
South Africa, so that makes it a little bit easier for me because now I'm like, okay, cool. Now I have to have 3 different apps or 2 different apps, whatever, and stuff like that, in order to kind of like figure out what birds I might be seeing and stuff like that. So yeah,
I think that's one of the advantages as well. PJ mentioned the lists that most likely birds and then less likely and rare.
Yeah.
Where Lasser, for instance, if you type in I don't know.
Pulse fishing out
Owl,
for
yeah.
Marievale.
If you typing owl, it'll give you all the owls, and you need to be specific. Whereas if you type in owl on Birder, it'll say these are the likely owls, maybe marsh, spotted eagle owl, and these are less likely, which makes it easier then to list and identify. I think just on Merlin, one of the advantages I found with Merlin and the identification tool in Merlin, I think is the best I've seen, where you can specify the bird is, I don't know, this size, it was this color, predominantly gray, black, and blue, or whatever it is. And then it'll give you, for the area that you're in, it'll give you a list of likely birds in that fall within that description, which has helped me bird better a little bit in some spots, because then you can see that, okay, I'm seeing this specific bird, but here's a few other birds that I haven't seen that are likely to be seen here as well, and I should look out for.
No, for sure. And I think other apps do have that feature, but it's not narrowed down to a specific location. So with Sassel, they have that whole thing where you can go and look at it like that. But again, because it doesn't use kind of like online lists and all of that, that people are actually, that other people have been creating or people have been logging and stuff, it doesn't actually narrow it down. So I think definitely, I think there's a whole ecosystem behind it. That's why eBirds is one of the bigger apps that people are using. But I guess like you're saying, like I guess it comes down to whatever people are comfortable with, whatever makes their birding a lot easier. Like we always say, every discussion is pretty much just like our opinions on like what things are.
At the end of the day, it's all our opinion.
Yeah, it's all subjective. And like I think when I guess like we would like to help people if they don't know about like other apps and stuff. So let us know what apps you're using. We definitely all use different apps. I mean, like I think Jay uses actually Roberts.
He's got Roberts and Sassel. I think.
And Sassel, you use Birder and
Lasser,
and I use eBird. So like we 3 of us are in a car, and then Nesh uses the books.
Books. Well, like, I mean, even my life list is not all the birds I've seen. None of the apps have all the birds I've seen. I actually keep an Excel spreadsheet that has my life list on it, which again, like PJ says, is problematic because it's a physical spreadsheet.
Exactly.
If that file gets corrupted, then I've got no recourse. So I think yeah, it is very subjective, and it's up to you what you use. I think one of the, well, I don't know, it's good or bad things about eBird, for instance, is sometimes they will verify sightings. So
Yeah.
they do keep you a little bit honest in that way.
Yeah.
Whereas I haven't seen that on any of the other apps where I think, Peter, you've got an interesting story about
Yeah.
the Carmine bee eater.
Carmine Beats, yeah.
Yeah.
So I pretty much was birding in Dino King, and as we were driving out of Dino King back on the Rest of Winter Road, Pinas Rivier, I saw a Carmine Bee Eater, and I pretty much just added it to my Dino King list. And a few weeks later, someone from eBirds reached out to me and they were saying, "Hey, that's really an interesting sighting that you saw, Carmine Bee Eater in Dino King, which means it falls into Gauteng."
Gauteng, yeah.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, it was literally on the back road of Dino King." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Can you like give me a specific, because then it might need to change like the distribution." How's it? And then part of that distribution then got to the point of we realized that at the back of Dino King, as you come out, you actually enter Limpopo. So technically, it's a different province, which means that the bird has been seen on that back road, even though like Dino King is technically like I don't know, like 2 meters across, because like literally it was the fence of Dino
Yeah.
King, and then like we saw the bird. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it makes it a lot easier when I guess you feel like someone might be watching you, to kind of like not make like any kind of like crazy sightings.
You double check.
Yeah, double check and stuff. So I think,
Which I'm sometimes not.
I double check him.
I'm guilty of not doing.
Yeah. I'm like, what is this? What is this bird that you had on the list over here? And then it's like, oh, cool, that bird doesn't occur here. Like we can't add
Oh
this
yes,
thing.
that was black
Yeah,
wing, black Smith lapwing, not black wing lapwing.
Exactly.
The last
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, what is this? We didn't see this thing. And then like, yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, this is kind of like what we're also talking about. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think I think we've covered a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode. Let us know in the comments what you think, and like, subscribe, and share. Boom. Peace.
Oh, we also need to add that the podcast goes out on Spotify.
On Spotify, yeah.
Yes, so you can listen to the podcast on Spotify as well.
If you don't want to watch our faces. Cool.
All right, cheers, guys.
Cheers.